the latest in tech and accessibility. This is Access Tech Live with Stephen Scott and Marc Aflalo.
We're back on Access Tech Live. Amber Mack is back with us again.
Now, Amber, you co-wrote the Amazon bestseller, by the way, Outsmarting Your Kids Online, which is a perfect segue into a conversation I wanted to have, which is our kids. You're a parent. I'm a parent. Stephen has some dogs. We all have similar concerns. And I'm going to tell you a little, two short stories. One story is a friend of mine whose 13-year-old son was the victim of sextortion. This is someone in his class made threats against him and put him into a deep depression to the borderline suicidal at points in time. And he was scared to call the police, scared to talk to anybody. And it was something that never actually even happened. And unfortunately, he was led down this path, and everybody's on a better note right now. Along those lines, in schools these days, there's a lot of conversations about access to cell phones. And there's two sides to that story. There's a story of, well, you know, it's access to information in the classroom if they need it. If something happens in the school, you can get in touch with your child to make sure they're okay. And there have been many instances like that, especially south of the border, where there have been school shootings and people have had access to their kids. So there's a big debate going on as to how much is too much access and what do we allow our kids to actually have in school. Where do you stand on that? It's a hard stand to take because I'm so torn in both directions here.
Well, first, I will say that when I co-wrote Outsmarting Your Kids Online, it was quite a few years ago. The book is totally out of date. Don't buy it. Okay. But I was kind of naive, I think, in some ways, because I thought, okay, let's layer on more technology to help to protect our kids from the dangers of the social media world. And I think what I've learned over the years is that that is not the answer. I think the answer, generally speaking, for all young people is really two words: get outside. And I know that sounds really simplistic, but I think one of the things that we've forgotten in this whole conversation is that it's not just technology that we have to blame. It's that kids are sitting inside for 8 hours a day, then they're going home, and then they're on their screens. They're not getting any physical exercise necessarily. They're not necessarily connecting with nature, all these things that we know are really good for your mental health. And so I would say to that question about whether or not we have too much technology in the classroom, I think the answer is absolutely yes, but I would add to it, and I'm certainly not a health expert, but I would encourage people who are deciding on curriculum to include movement, include outdoor activities for kids, include other opportunities to get away from that technology. And I think we'll see that we would have happier kids in the long run. So I think all of us really have an unhealthy relationship in many ways with technology, and we could all benefit from less technology in our lives. I don't think you're going to be able to solve this problem with saying, hey, no phones in the classroom, because the kids are on computers with many of their courses, right? They know how to get text messages on those computers. They know how to bypass security layers that have been built in. But I think that's not the answer. I think the answer is, hey, do we need to rethink education? And do we need to rethink it in a way where we recognize that, hey, nobody benefits from sitting all day, including adults, and maybe we just have to do things differently.
I love that you say including adults, because I'm victim of that. I'm guilty of that. Sorry. It's an interesting challenge. My son is autistic, and he socializes electronically. That's how he socializes with his friends, and he has trouble face to face, which is an interesting challenge, because we're constantly balancing the how much is too much versus, oh, but he's playing with a friend that he wouldn't be playing with otherwise. So we try to do that in our house, but it is definitely challenging. And I think everybody has a unique situation as well. On the classroom side of things, I mean, there was a story I heard last week of a girl who was singing in class as a presentation, and someone filmed it, and it was out as a meme about 5 minutes later. So it's a tough balance, and I can't imagine, in the education system that I know the conversation's happening now. What are your as a parent, what do you do to try and encourage, your child to get outside and be off technology? How do you balance that?
Well, I think everybody wants to kind of have this magical formula for this answer to how much technology is the right amount of technology. And the one thing that I did learn when we were writing this book, and I've been researching technology when it comes to how young people are using it, is that there's a real difference between creation versus consumption. And when we talk about technology, for example, to me, in the category of consumption, I would include, browsing endlessly on TikTok, right? You're just consuming content that's out there. You're not really being creative at all. You're not collaborating or engaging. To your point of your son, I would say that, video games are very social for a lot of kids, especially young boys. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's great to be able to connect and have those relationships, because I don't think that falls into the category of consumption. The worst type of technology, and the one that we always try to get our son away from, is that consumption piece, is that when you're just sitting and scrolling endlessly for hours and hours. I would prefer that he spends more time doing things like learning how to use things like Cricut machines that belong in more of a category of kind of that maker category with technology. So creating things versus consuming things, collaborating versus consuming, I think we have to kind of steer them in that right direction and add that physicality back into their day if you can, and if that can be part of how they learn.
I often get the impression there are two types of parents in this arena. There's the parents like yourselves, like you two, who are very keen to get your kids out there and do things and, have a healthy relationship with technology, and maybe sometimes struggle with that. But then there's other parents who will gladly give their child an iPad or an iPhone and say, off you go, leave me in peace. At which point do these parents not realize that if you're going to take the time to bring a child into the world, you've kind of got to look after him or her?
Well, I think a lot of parents really do struggle with this question about using technology and how to guide their kids, because maybe they don't know how to use it in their own lives. Maybe they don't have sort of those guardrails in place for how they engage in the online space either. So I think it comes down in some instances to a real lack of understanding of how technology works, the impact that it can have. And also, I do believe that there's a little bit of a misconception from a lot of parents as far as how the platforms and the tools their kids are using, how those are protecting those kids. I will say first and foremost that a lot of these tech companies don't necessarily put kids first when they're designing some of this technology. So that's a growing issue. I don't really want to be hugely judgmental, because I think there are those parents, like the single parents who, maybe they're out working and their kid has nothing to do but kind of watch the iPad, and it's a harder ask for them to be that digital guide. But at the same time, I think that all of the research points in the same direction. More screen time, more mental health issues, and kids already are facing an overwhelming number of issues with their mental health, especially coming out of the pandemic.
Yeah. I'll tell you a quick story, Stephen. Before I was a parent, I remember having some friends over who had two kids at the time, and we were at the dinner table, and one of their kids was being rowdy, so they handed the kid an iPad or a game. And I remember being very judgmental at the time, going, "How can you do that?" Fast forward to when you're a parent and you're in a restaurant and your kids are just not. They're not behaving. And sometimes, there's the easy way out, and the easy way out just makes it a calm situation for everybody. So it's very easy to judge, and I'm not saying that in a mean way, Stephen, but it's easy to judge before you're in that situation, which is why you talk about the single parent, Amber, and it's a perfect situation. You have to really look at these things case by case, Stephen.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But I think it's also a responsibility of parents to look after the child they bring into the world. So, I think there's a very much so a responsibility here. And on that point of responsibility, Amber, I want to ask you about the responsibility of parents to understand the types of safety nets that the devices that they give their children have. Because often parents, certainly ones I've spoken to in the past, I don't have a clue, I just give them the device and, they figure it out. That's not good enough. Parents need to take responsibility there too, right? They have to actually take the time to look into what restrictions perhaps maybe need to be put onto devices.
I think one of the best things that parents can do is that they should use the same tools that their kids are using. They should play a little Fortnite. They should jump onto TikTok. They should download Snapchat. They should start to understand how those tools work.
Yeah.
I think it gives you an insight, to your point, into the experience that your kids are having online when you fully understand the tools that they're using. And you can you can nudge them in the right direction, right? To your point, where all of a sudden, if you say to a young person, okay, just take the iPad, do whatever you want. Parents have this tendency sometimes, if they don't understand the digital space, to kind of throw up their arms and say, hey, it's complicated. I don't get it. My kid is more tech savvy. I don't know what they're doing. Oh my goodness. And they don't understand the full risks that exist. That was probably one of the most troubling things that I've seen over the years. The kids who tended to get into the most trouble online tended to have parents who really didn't even understand that there were real threats in the online space. And that disconnect, I think, creates sort of this divide where it's almost impossible to guide your child if you have no sense of the path they're going down. Versus in the physical world, we know our neighborhoods, we know what streets are safe, we tell our kids where to go, how to cross the street, how to ask for help. We tend to guide them, but I think you're right. There are probably too many parents who've just said, hey, you know what, I don't know what you're doing, I'm not going to get involved, but let's face it, as we're talking about today, the risks are very real.
Couldn't have said that better, Amber. I actually encourage parents, as you do, to try those apps and actually use the opportunity. If your child knows more than you, let them teach you. It's a good bonding moment too. It's a good way to kind of separate them off the computer in that consumption mode and let them be a little bit more, empower them to teach a bit. And any final tips or tricks that you use with your son to keep him safe online? Any things that you can, or you look out to in the future you're kind of worried about?
Well, I think that you actually presented probably the best tip that there is, which is ask your child to teach you. Ask your child questions. Ask them to send you the TikTok videos that they think are funny so that you can post them on your Facebook account or Instagram account. Try to build a relationship where technology really is that thread that can kind of bring all of you together. I think that's the best tip. And I think secondly, I would just warn parents about this deepfake danger that we are entering into, where all of a sudden audio and video can be manipulated. And I would encourage them to warn their kids and explain to their kids what these risks are, and that there are repercussions if you're the creator of those deepfake videos, and if they are the victims of receiving them, then talk to them about what paths they can follow.
It's a hard question to answer. Just a final one, Amber, in a word. What's the right age for a child to have a smartphone?
Oh, God.
My answer is none.
Amber, Mac, thank
it's
you.
never a perfect answer.
Thank you so much for coming on. It's been really interesting talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on to the show. Tell people how they can follow you, find out more about what you're doing.
You can follow me at ambermac.com. I do a newsletter each Tuesday that's totally free at ambermac.com/newsletter.
And it is a great newsletter. Coming up, how to prevent cyber attacks in the country. Well, our next guest is the associate head of the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, and we'll dive in. Stick around.
We want to hear from you. Follow us on social media and get involved at Access Tech Live. We'll be right back.